Hi guys, welcome back to The Layout. I'm David. In today's video we'll be going from this to this. I'll start by showing you how I made the lighting rig. We'll then make the very start of the back scene, and finally we'll lay some Pico ball head track. So you join me up in the loft where we have got the Branchline station boards. Now, since you've last seen this in the previous video on the Branchline, I've got all of the LEDs installed. So this took me absolutely ages, but I've got all of the LED tapes in, soldered together just with some jumper wires there. Then they're powered just in the corner by a PC power supply. That's just an old computer power supply I had, but any 12-volt supply would do, as long as it's got enough amperage to deal with the lights. You can see I've just laid out the track plan, just to give a rough idea of where everything's got to go. And then I've been using that to mark out an end board over here. Okay, so that's the plywood ends glued in place there. I just used a lot of wood glue, and then I've used some screws just to temporarily hold either end in. And then when the glue's dried, I will remove the wood screws. So I've also just given it a coat of grey wood primer across the surface, and that should just help protect the wood from warping as I use the glue and water for the ballast, for example, and things like that. What I think I'm going to do now is actually glue on the track plan. I wouldn't ordinarily do this. However, I think with such a complex design, well, it's not that complex, but I've got to get some point work in the right place down here. So what I think I'm going to do is, whilst this paint is wet, just put on some PVA, roll it out, and then I can use that just to glue down the track plan. The PVA, of course, will also help waterproof the board. Right, so it's a little while later, and I did in fact glue down the track plan. What I ended up doing is using some wood glue and the paint just to put the plan down. I've then actually just gone over it with a paintbrush a little bit, or well, a roller, just to blend it in at the edges, but you can still make out the key points here, so, well, the crossover. Also, what I've done then is just come along and put some wood filler on all of those sort of tongue and groove joints, whatever you want to call them, on the back scene. I'm just going to come along now and use a palm sander to sand that back as best as I can, and then it will be time to put a coat of primer on the back scene. Okay, so some of you may have seen this footage as an Instagram reel or a YouTube short. If you don't follow my Instagram, go and follow it at Horsey Railway Modeller if you're into that sort of thing. But yeah, so I'm just adding the back scene here to the Branchline boards, a coat of white primer, followed by, whilst it's still wet, some blue. And then here I'm blotting in the clouds. Apologies for the autofocus there. For a full detailed guide on this, there is a standalone video already on my channel on how I paint my back scenes, but I'm just using a brush here to fluff in some white paint and make rough cloud shapes. And then I'm just going all the way down the board, and then when that's done, come back and add some more detail. It's started to dry by now, so you can sort of fluff the clouds up with the brush. You can add more highlights and low lights. You can sort of mix the blues and whites. I tend to only use the two colours. I could come back and add a lot more if I wanted to, but for now it's fine as it is. Then I've just airbrushed over the top there, blending in the clouds a little better, and you can see it looks pretty good. Quite happy with that, and I will be coming back and adding more detail in the foreground in the future. And as you can see here, just painting the baseboard grey for the 100th time. Okay, so it's the very next morning, and it's time to move on with layout. So what I've got here is two different options for track bed. Now, ordinarily, I would use Cork. It's nice and cheap. I bought a massive roll of it on eBay, and I think this will last me for the rest of my life, to be honest. This is a tiny section of it, actually. There's still an entirely untouched section of huge roll ready to be used. But also, I saw this in the model shop the other day, part of Lowestoft. If you've not been there, very good shop, no sponsorship, just use it or lose it, as Charlie at Chadwick says. But no, so I've seen this used an awful lot on Chadwick Model Railway and also on American YouTube channels, and it's the Woodland Scenics HO track bed. Just wait for this police car to go past. Now I figured as the section of line I'm basing this on is a single track branch line, it's got quite steep ballast shoulders either side. I thought I'd give this a go, as it will create more of a ballast shoulder. So I've taken it out of the box here, and as you can see, it's a 24-foot roll, and it's got this really nice sort of chamfered shape there that should form a good basis for the track bed. I believe also you can split it down the middle. It's got a seam, and that should allow it to go around corners. For the track coming in from the tunnel over here and coming this way, I'm going to use this, and for the point work along here, I'm probably going to continue to use this. But then as we branch towards the yard, if I pan back to the right, these tracks down here that will have much less of a ballast shoulder, I'll swap to using the ordinary cork method. Okay, so as you can see in the important bits of the track plan, I've actually got them printed out and stuck down as I showed you earlier. What I've just done though is I've just laid on, this is a Pico bullhead point, I've just laid it on the track plan just so I could work out roughly where it goes, and I've marked that with a Sharpie. Then also, as this is wider than the tracks are on the plan, I've just roughly laid it on down the middle, and I've drawn along one side of it so I can see exactly where it needs to go. So what I'm going to do now is glue down the foam, or at least start gluing down the first major bit of foam there. So what I've got here is some Deluxe Materials Speed Bond. It says it will glue wood, foam, fabric and paper with a 5-minute grab time. Now, I'm pretty sure you could use a different glue to this, Copydex for example, PVA, whatever, but I saw this in the model shop, it wasn't too expensive, and yeah, I thought I'd give it a go. Okay, so I've got the major bulk of the Woodland Scenics foam in place there. So I've been using a small army of dog food cans just to weigh it all down whilst it glues in place, but that's been going quite well. For here, where the junction is, I actually got the point work out. This is the bullhead track, not glued down at all. I just put it in place to see where the foam needs to go. I've just been cutting small slithers of the foam to put in between the two main pieces, gluing those in place. I gave it a bit of a sand as there was some high spots in the middle, but now that's lovely and flat, ready to receive the track. This section here, I've got a small stub coming off, which is where the point work leads off into the yard. If I just put that into place, this is the start of a ladder of 2 points that leads into the yard. And for this section over here, I'm going to use some cork. Now the reason I'm doing this is because traditionally the main line, or well, the line going into the station has quite a ballast shoulder, is well maintained, it's relatively raised up in the ballast there, it's got a cess between the two tracks for drainage, etc. Yeah, slightly better engineered track bed. However, in the yard it's going to be much more flat, just the track basically dug into the ground. It's probably going to be quite overgrown, a lot of grass and rock and rubble in the yard itself, so I just want to have this all on one piece of cork. Now, to get from the foam to the cork, I'm going to have to do something interesting. I think I'm going to probably stack up a few bits of cork and maybe sand it down, or maybe use a bit of cork and some plasticard to make a sort of gentle ramp down. But for now, all I'm going to do is glue this sheet of cork into place. Okay, so it is the next day and that cork is dry and in place now. You see just over there, I've put another slither of foam in where the crossover needs to go. That's just gluing up now with some weight on it. And now I turn my focus to this section here where the point ladder for the yard has to come down. I think I'm going to glue some cork in here that fits the right shape. Then using some card, I'm just going to gently step it down in the middle. There's not too much difference, probably about 1 millimetre or so between the foam and the cork. Just going to really gently step that down. Then we can have the yard at an ever so slightly lower level than the station tracks, and it should look quite good. After that, it'll be time to move our way down here, I've got to put some foam in from this bit of track here up through a tunnel portal and off the scene, and then also I need to construct some sort of baseboard over there to link the incline to the branch line. Okay, so I'm turning my attention to this corner here. We're coming off the end of the incline and onto the scenic section. So what I've just done is I've cut some 18mm ply to fill this area here, and I've just got it balanced in place there on various things just to get to roughly the right height. It's still a little bit low, but I can actually build it up a little bit more when I install it properly. But what I'm going to do now is use a combination of set track and flexi track to try and just mark out where the curve needs to come around this corner, and then when that's done I'll cut the bit of wood out and install it properly. Okay, so in the corner I've got my nice curve of plywood. It's screwed at the back there to my bit of ply that's sort of a backboard for the storage yard. It's then got a small leg down here holding it up, and then a larger leg here, and it's all screwed and glued in place. You can see I'm currently gluing in some Woodland Scenics track bed, and that comes across here into the scenic section. Now I'm hoping this hasn't shifted with all the dog food on, but we'll let that dry for probably quite a while actually, because it's on a tight curve, so I don't want to take the cans off too early, and then we'll see how it looks. The final thing I need to do before I can lay track then is get some sort of bridge in across here. To that end, what I've bought is a Fowler kit. I bought this at Gauge Master. I actually drove down to Gauge Master a couple of weekends ago just to do a little bit of shopping, and I bought this. It's a nice little plastic kit. Just need to glue it all together. But it's got some railings that go on either side, a bit of a structure that goes underneath, and I just thought this would be a little different to other bridges that you see around on the circuit. So yeah, I think that should look good in place there. So what I'm going to do is glue it up, prime it, and then we can start painting it before it gets installed. Okay, so once again it's a little while later, and I think that's all of the roadbed and cork in place, and I can start thinking about laying some track. Starting in the corner here, we've got some plywood just coming round, and that's got foam track bed on. See what I mean over there by it's supported by the rear bit of plywood, and then it's got its own sort of front support. That comes through into the scenic section. We've got the tunnel portal just temporarily plonked on there to see where it's going to go. Here you can see the bridge, and it's just been primed, but I have glued it in place as there should be plenty of access to paint. I'm probably just going to paint the wooden deck and then weather up the girders a little bit. And then coming down this way, you can see plenty of Woodland Scenics foam down into the station. If we come down into the goods yard, you can see the large area of cork there, ready for the 3 goods yard tracks. See the join here, where we go from foam down this small piece of card that's glued in with wood glue into the cork, and it's a nice smooth transition down about 1.5 millimeters. Really happy with what we've achieved so far. I think it's time to start thinking about the track. Okay, so I'm going to start with the main junction here. There's a medium radius right hand point there, into a double slip, into a medium radius left hand, and a second medium radius left hand. And again, these slope down onto the cork just there. So I've been pretty accurate, hopefully, when I've laid this foam and cork, so it should all fit nicely into place. But what I think I'm going to do is just quickly attach some longer bits of flexi track to the main junction there, so I can make sure I'm getting it nice and parallel. Then I'm going to mark it all up, drill some holes for the wires and point motors, and it'll be time to glue everything down. Okay, so what I did was put down some bullhead flexi track, just roughly where it needs to go. It's still loose, but I just used that to get some sight lines through the points. And then what I've done is just held each throw bar in place and used a tiny drill bit just to poke a hole in the foam. And to make those holes in the foam more obvious, next to each one of them, I've put a triangle for a point motor hole, and I've put a line for a wire hole. So what I'm going to do now is just drill through all of those, and then we should be able to get this track glued down. Okay, so the first one I pushed a little too hard, and the drill did push down into the foam there, but it shouldn't be too bad. The ballast will fill that in, most likely. For anyone concerned, I did check that the drill bit, even if it's all the way through here, is way above the stock that's underneath in the storage yard. However, I have just given it a quick hoover and removed any bits of debris that had made it down onto the rolling stock underneath. Okay, so I've just laid the point work in to make sure all of those little frog wires are in the right locations, and they are, which is perfect. And now it's time to glue the track down. Now, ordinarily, I use all-purpose wood glue. Any wood glue will do. But I just wanted to give a quick test to see what works best on this Wooden Scenics foam. So on the left-hand side here, we've got this Deluxe Materials Speed Bond, which is what I use to glue the foam to the plywood. And on the right, we've got wood glue. And they both seem to be just as good as each other, to be honest. Yeah, not bad. I've been lifting them up. You can see you can get the wood glue to lift a tiny bit. But if I'm honest, the Speed Bond gave a cleaner install. You can see here on this track, it's actually probably slightly cleaner. And on here you can see there's still some white residue from the wood glue where it's sort of beaded up around the edges of the track. So I think I'll settle for this Speed Bond. When it comes to laying the long straights of track, I might be more inclined to use the wood glue, because I can lay that on quite thick and just spread it out, get the track weighed down, and it'll be perfectly fine. But for this delicate area around the point work, definitely going to use this Speed Bond. So what I'm going to do, just lift up each point like so, and get a bit of glue on underneath them. Okay, so that's now gluing up with the Great Wall of Dog Food. I might whack the heater on next to it, just so it dries a little bit quicker. It says it's got a 5-minute grab time on that glue. So what I'll probably do is put the heater on, leave it for maybe 20 minutes or so, just so it's nice and firm, then we can start laying some more of the track. Whilst the points for the station glue up, I thought I'd turn my attention to the other important piece of track, which is this curve that comes in from the non-scenic incline into the scenic section. Currently I've got this small transition piece soldered into place, but I don't think it necessarily fits there, as it's still on the curve, and having that straight section will cause a little bit of a kink. I could of course bring it all the way around to here, where there is a straight section in the track, but that brings my tunnel portal very far forwards to try and hide the Code 100 track. So what I think I'm going to have to do is desolder this straight section and sort of create my own transition piece much further back, so I can have the tunnel portal at the back there. Okay, so as you can see here, I've soldered my own transition between the Code 100 and the Code 75 bullhead, and it works really rather well. The way I achieved this was actually to solder the Code 75 bullhead on top of the fish plates of the Code 100. So that's Code 100 set track there, which is making the curve round the corner, and joining with the incline, which is also Code 100 track. And then this is the Code 75 bullhead on the right here. And all I did was simply rest this on top of the Code 100 fish plates. Didn't slide them in or anything, they're literally sat on top. Applied some solder. I've got a really good joint here. I'm using one of my HAA wagons, as I've noticed of all my rolling stock, they are quite sensitive and they're perfectly fine. It's going over, no worries whatsoever. So what I'm going to do now is position this curve exactly where it needs to be and glue it into place. Okay, so it's actually 2 days later. It's New Year's Day today, and you can see over the last couple of days I've made quite a lot of progress in track laying. Didn't want to film all of it because, well, it's just the same thing over and over again. Gluing track down, putting weight on and leaving it for a while. Got up on my voice, I've got quite a cold, so that's one of the other reasons I haven't been filming over the last 2 days. But I'll just give you a pan round from starting at the far corner. We've got that Code 100 track on the foam bed, comes around here. We've got some copper-clad sleepers there for a baseboard join, and you can see just behind the tunnel portal is where I've got that custom soldered joint between the Code 100 and Code 75 bullhead. I have actually given that a little bit of a file, and now it runs really, really smoothly. We then come along across the bridge that will be over the river, or the little weir, whatever it is that's going to go there. We've got another set of copper-clad sleepers. So these are just the DCC Concepts copper-clads, and you just solder those in place and glue them down. I've yet to actually use a slitting disc to go across the board join, but I will be doing that in the next day or so. Point work, this is probably the last thing you saw me glue down. That is all lovely and in working order. And I've got the frog wires going through the board, ready to wire up in the next video. Coming along here, we've got this nice sweeping curve of track into the station. That goes all the way down here. Another baseboard join with those copper-clad sleepers into the crossover at the end. You can see one is shorter than the other because there's going to be potential for a vehicle ramp at the very end of that track. The final pieces of flexi-track to install then are in the yard. You can see the points are glued down as I showed you before, so these are very much solid and in place now. But I've just had some trouble positioning these bits of track. There is no printout of the track plan obviously for this Cork area, unlike the foam roadbed that basically showed me exactly where the track needed to go. I need to measure up where this track needs to go. And to that end, I've started the assembly of the goods shed that needs to go down here. So if I just plonk that in place, that's where that's going to sit. So I need to get those tracks aligned so they go nicely through the goods shed. So I'm going to do that. Probably going to cover the whole area in wood glue and then weigh it down, and that'll be the final bit of track load for this section. Okay, so it's the evening now. Spent the day out with family. However, I did have some time this morning to set this gluing down, and I continued this evening. You can see I've got the goods yard laid. You can see I've also been doing a tiny bit of work on this ratio goods shed. Just got the roof trusses in and the very start of the platform inside there. If you can't tell by the fact there's locos and rolling stock out on the layout, I've been giving this area a bit of a quick test. So I think this is where I'm going to leave this video for today. You can see plenty of progress. We've gone from bare baseboards with only one of which having a lighting rig to a full set of lights across the entire board. If I just have a look there, you can see all lit up. A Backscene and the track laid. The next video I'm thinking of making is wiring this up. I do have to come along and slit between the tracks, between those copper-clad sleepers, to allow me to take these boards apart. And once I've done that, I can flip them up, get them upside down, and it should be much easier to wire them up. I'm going to be using just normal DCC bus with dropper wires, but then for the point motors, I'm going to be using the Cobalt IP digitals. I've got 7 of those left over from a previous layout, so I want to use those. And I'm going to be using a few of the different various DCC Concepts products to make a nice control panel and use digital control through an accessory bus. No sponsorship at all, just, well, I'd say I'm a happy customer. I've not done it yet, so we'll see how it goes. I might be quite a disgruntled customer. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and depending when you watch it, I wish you a very happy new year for 2025, and I look forward to bringing you more content through the rest of the year. But you are all really appreciated. Thank you so much for liking, subscribing, and leaving your comments below. Particularly the comments, they're really useful. So yeah, thank you very, very much. Bye for now.